Yes, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening. My name is Mr. Aegis. I will be your teacher for this lesson. I am a health teacher in the real world, and I stream first-time playthroughs, indie, classic, retro games, first-time playthroughs, but I also give health and wellness lessons in my streams here. We stream a whole variety of topics like breathing, nutrition, supplementation, overstimulation, self-talk, all different kinds of physical and mental health and well-being subjects. Today, we have a very special lesson and a very important one. We're going to be talking about online safety and grooming awareness. This is our first lesson stream in April, and April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Grooming and Child Abuse Prevention Month as well. We're going to be talking about this very important subject, discussing things like how to understand and recognize the signs and risk factors of online exploitation, understanding, knowing the methods that abusers use, and how we can support victims and hold the perpetrators accountable. Of course, I do need to warn you that these are challenging topics. We will be discussing issues of abuse, maybe trauma triggers. So I want you to participate to the level that you feel comfortable. Issues will be addressed with sensitivity, but they will be addressed frankly, because it is important. The areas we're going to cover, we'll start with what grooming is. Talk about the behaviors that are involved, what these signs are that you might recognize, how to help someone get safe, basic security and prevention, and what we can do as a society to help prevent this issue. First thing we need to answer, of course, is what is grooming? What is this thing that we continue to hear about happening, that continues to happen in our communities? What is it and what does it mean? Well, grooming is psychological and or social manipulation of a vulnerable person, typically by someone who's in a position of authority over them, who has power over them or society in general, or has some degree of influence. Not always, but often. And it is typically to build a relationship with them for the purpose of abuse or exploitation. Why does this happen? Why people do this? And we'll be frank, the reason is often sex. Let's not sugarcoat that. There is this mythos, this popular conception that goes around that it is about power and control, that it's not about sex, that it is about power and control over others. And I have to be frank, I think that's bunk. I think it can be about that, but it is generally about sex. Yes, control and power over a person who has less power than you. But it is also primarily about sex. It may be about money. That is something that it can also be about. But this is generally what it's about. It can be about money or access to people's influence. Another reason why perpetrators do this is they minimize in their own minds the idea that they are harming someone. Create the myth in their minds of a complicit victim. By rationalizing, they believe that the victim loves them, or even that they genuinely do love the victim themselves. But this is a self-justification. They may believe that they are providing something for the victim, protection or resources. But it can happen to anyone. I want to make that clear as well. It's not just someone who is a child. It's not just someone who is a young person. It can happen to anyone. Some of the tactics that we're about to discuss are the same tactics, the same abuse methods that are used by scammers to manipulate senior citizens, to pretend and develop a relationship with them, to get them to give over their Social Security checks. Many of these are the same types of tactics that social engineering uses to manipulate people into all kinds of things. The reason is that they're effective. There are people who are more vulnerable than others, who may be more likely to be exploited, but it can happen to anyone, and that does include you out there. It includes me. It can include someone that you care about, which is why this lesson is so important. Anyone who has any vulnerability that someone might exploit could be the victim. There are many serious consequences. In the short term, often confusion and guilt are the result in the victim. Confusion, especially because the victim may begin to get confused about what healthy relationships are supposed to be like. It may be their first relationship with someone. It may lead them to believe that this is normal. Guilt is often also very common because the victim will often wonder if they did something to cause this, if they led the person on, or why they didn't recognize the signs, why they didn't see it. Depression and anxiety are also very common, of course, as are withdrawal and isolation. Victims may fear others after an encounter with a perpetrator. They may fear that others will only always have bad intentions towards them, or that people only like them to abuse them. They may think that this is normal, that this is how people treat each other. So they will withdraw from society. It can also lead to risky coping mechanisms. Substance abuse and self-harm are unfortunately very common among victims. Seeking ways to deal with these symptoms. In their mourning of something that has been lost, they may fear being re-victimized, so they don't reach out and develop new, better social connections. People have experiences with this themselves, yes. Many of you may have had experiences with this. In the long term, PTSD or CPTSD are also very common. Trust issues may emerge. People may have long-term difficulties in forming and maintaining healthy relationships because they now fear intimacy. They fear that the people who express interest in them have some ulterior motive. Self-esteem and body image issues will also frequently arise, unfortunately. Either because people will believe that no one could like them the way they are, or that people will only like them for looking a certain way, or only be interested in them from sex. Work and school problems may also emerge as a preoccupation develops with the symptoms, as depression or anxiety set in, a loss of focus on school or work, or these things may not feel important anymore. They may not feel supported in these environments. Attachment disorders are also something that might emerge. Unhealthy attachment styles, becoming either overly dependent or excessively detached in the relationships people do have. I used these terms, PTSD and CPTSD, things that not everyone may be familiar with. And yes, Dragon, we do have a lesson coming up on suicide prevention. The risk of re-victimization is also high. But I use these terms, PTSD, CPTSD, and not everyone recognizes or understands what CPTSD is. It is different than PTSD. In PTSD, generally, not always, but generally, it is related to a short-term or a singular incident of trauma that typically results in hypervigilance in the victim, always being worried, always being aware and vigilant for something to happen again. generally will try to avoid triggers that remind them of the incident. Flashbacks are also not uncommon. In CPTSD, though, which is complex PTSD, sometimes people get it confused and they think it means chronic PTSD, which is not an inaccurate way to think about it, because it's generally related to more repeated or long-term traumatization, a long series of abuses. Emotional dysregulation is more common. Difficulty with their own identity, their sense of self, is a common symptom. And more turmoil and more difficulty in relationships. In either of these cases, though, beyond the scope of this lesson, these are things to seek assistance with, therapy, medical help. But PTSD and CPTSD do have different manifestations. Some of these are also very similar to each other. They overlap in many ways. And yes, the pain, very much so. These types of manipulations we're going to be talking about are used by an abuser to get a victim to do things for them. And it may be for things other than sex or even money. It may be to get their influence on something. And as I said, many people think it can only happen to certain types of people. But it can happen to anyone. There are, however, people who are more likely to be the target. The traits that people will prey on, that the abusers will seek out and try to manipulate and exploit. And there are traits of people who are likely to be abusers. I want to make sure that people understand that this word here, which is thrown around very often, narcissism, is a legitimate and diagnosable personality disorder. And let's be very clear that there is no mental illness that makes a person do these things. We talk about the trait that might lead someone to think that they deserve or should have control over others. But someone who has narcissistic personality disorder, it does not mean that they are going to be an abuser or to hurt anyone. Just as there is no excuse for, say, Elon Musk, who says that he has autism, for doing the things that he does. Autism doesn't make someone a racist, for example. Autism doesn't make someone an asshole. A personality disorder does not make someone a bad person. But narcissistic traits can manifest themselves in this way. Desire or a belief that someone deserves to have control over others. Antisocial behavior, having a lack of remorse, is also something to watch for. People are willing to harm to get something that they want. Distinct lack of empathy. Inability to put oneself in the shoes of another. A superficial charm may also be something that is noticed in someone who is an abuser. On the surface, they seem very charming, very relatable, but it doesn't go deeper than that. Traits that are often sought out by abusers to exploit someone with are people who have low self-confidence, people who don't believe that they deserve good things, or someone that doesn't think that they are very attractive. People who have mental health challenges are also preyed on for many reasons, and we're going to talk about that shortly, why these particular traits are preyed on. People who are socially isolated, who don't have a strong social network, a strong support network that might be able to do what we're trying to do, which is notice that someone is in the process of being victimized. People who are in emotional distress may also be targets, because when someone is feeling grief, for example, or going through a big life change, they are more vulnerable. Their emotions are high. They may be going through a lot. They aren't able to process everything happening all at once. People who are marginalized. People who are from marginalized backgrounds, low socioeconomic status, people who don't have many financial resources, people who are members of minority ethnic groups, people who have less power in society, and of course, children who are very much marginalized in our society. We'll talk about that more often coming up in the next couple slides. Yes, Siren, absolutely. We do need to make that distinction clear. Things are made far too simple in media, in movies and TV shows about these issues. They simplify this, and it gives the wrong perception in the collective consciousness. And yes, ADHD and possibly autism, very much traits that we should be looking to protect because they are more likely to be the targets. Talk about why momentarily. The positions that people are in who generally are the abusers. Positions of power over others. Authority figures. The obvious that come to mind are politicians who we often see are engaged in sexually exploitive behaviors. Because that authority gives them a sense of entitlement. They believe that they deserve to have this power over others. They believe that they should get what they want, and they're used to getting what they want. The same is true of people who are very wealthy. Empress, you ask if predator hunters are bad. I don't believe that it is effective, and I don't believe it's generally helpful. We get to the Q&A session at the end. We'll talk more about that, but I generally don't believe that it's helpful. I think it can do more harm than good. And too often the people who engage in it are there not for supporting victims, but out of a sense of their own attention. Perhaps vengeance, which is an understandable emotion to have about this, but the focus should be on helping victims. Yes, and Anomalies Keys makes an excellent point. Very often, it is, what is the saying? Every accusation is a confession among some people. We see many people in religious settings or in politics today who harp on this issue, but they don't have a genuine care for it. And what does it turn out? Who does it turn out that is often doing these things? It is these kinds of politicians or religious figures. Celebrities are, of course, very often people who will abuse their fame to manipulate others. They feel that they're special. They have fame. People like them. It must be for a reason. They will even feel that victims are lucky to have them, to be around them. And that belief, feeling that you are special or above others, that others should feel fortunate to be around you, to be in your circle, it's a very powerful intoxicant for people. Makes them believe that they should get whatever they want from others. There are many different means that are used to manipulate and exploit people. You're absolutely right, Raven. Many of those people blame LGBTQ, and they themselves are the ones who are engaging in predatory behavior. They'll try to shift the blame to people who have no power in society. Social media is an enormous means that people use because there's tons of access. People on social media feel safe. There's a sense of anonymity. The things you say can't be traced back to you. And this works both ways. Both the attackers, the abusers, feel safe, and the victims, they let their guard down because they feel like it's just the internet. And of course, on social media, people post everything. They'll talk about their interests. They'll be connected with their friends. They'll talk about where they're going. places they like to go. Post about our fears. We talk about our doubts. We give abusers all kinds of information about ourselves that could be used against us. Where this often happens, outside of, say, celebrity circles or religious figures and politicians, is in online communities, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this lesson, because there continue to be so many instances, so many incidents within online communities. We hear about it all the time. We hear about another instance on Twitter or wherever of a victim coming forward and talking about their abuser. Turns out that it happened in an online community, in a Discord server, for example. Grooming sometimes turn into cyberbullying. I think it can not just turn into, I think it can begin that way. And in that sense, I mean that making someone feel even less, making someone feel even more insecure or have even less self-confident. Anomaly Keys mentions some people would insult them to neg her. Yes, negging, another concept that can be brought into this. Yes, Raven, if the abuser doesn't get what they want, we'll talk about the result. Online communities, like I said, are very often where this happens because these are specific interest groups, usually. People in them feel a sense of belonging. The abuser can make the victim feel like they're connected in some way. They already share this common interest that they're both really into, for example. It gives them a built-in connection to the person, a way in. And people within these communities who have status positions, who are important or popular in these groups, they have a sense of authority. People look up to them in those communities, think that they are a minor celebrity. And those people have an inflated sense of importance. Small internet community where someone is a big fish in a small pond. And we're talking about often victims who skew younger. Because in these online communities, they're typically things like gaming. Gaming communities. Communities centered around a particular video game or tabletop game or whatever else. Fandoms. Artists. There was a convention recently for a show in which one of the popular fan musicians was found to have been grooming a fan. And so the convention was being bombarded with very reasonable demands for them to remove this artist from the convention. These minor spotlights in things like subcultures. In the furry community, it happens. Streamers themselves, content creators. Dr. Disrespect, for example. Many different cases of this happening. People who get any degree of fame, popularity, the amount of money. As Anomaly Keys puts it, these are often places of belonging for young people who are just beginning to develop their identity. They're just burgeoning into and discovering who they are. They skew young. They are often members of the LGBTQ community. They are often minorities. These are sometimes people on the fringe. These subcultures they're in may be things that are obscure or niche. And so they're very earnest. They're looking for connections in these obscure communities. People who they can connect with who have this lesser known special interest. Often many of the people who are in these groups are looking for attention. They might be attention starved in their real lives. And so these places give them an opportunity to connect with people, to get attention. And unfortunately, some of the people will try to take advantage of that. Many people in these communities are also very zealous about their idols, about these minor figures. And they will zealously defend them. Or even if they do become victimized, they will feel less likely to come out about it. They wouldn't want to hurt this person, even though they've hurt them. Big fish in a small pond. As been putting it in the chat, these are places that people should feel safe. These are places that people may let their guard down. And often, people in these communities have multiple vulnerabilities. They may not only be young, but they may also be LGBTQ. Just discovering who they are. They may be young and also a minority. Someone not able to connect in the physical world with these interests that they might have. They're less likely to be believed, particularly for youth. And a big point I want to touch on is because there are so few spaces for young people anymore, especially online. Spaces have become primarily for adults. There's no Club Penguin. There's no Toontown. All of the spaces that used to be safeguarded and curated and built primarily for young people, that's all been monetized. It's all been turned into spaces for adults as well. So children don't have as many spaces that they can just be kids. And another point I want to make is that children in our society today are assigned virtually no agency. Because they have very few spaces, or none at all, because they are marginalized, because they are an exploited class, they're incentivized to grow up faster. There's nowhere else for them to go but adult spaces, but they're infantilized and treated as lesser in those spaces. So they feel like they want to grow up faster so that they can get out from under these rules and regulations, which opens them up even more towards exploitation. For adults to tell them, you're so much more mature than other kids your age. An enormous red flag. Roblox, for example, the Payne mentions, yes, fortunately you can at the very least report such things. Even in those spaces, they're no longer just for kids. This is mirrored in the real world, of course, because there are also hardly any spaces for kids in the real world. I've said it before, but we hear boomers tell kids, when I was your age, I was climbing trees. What trees? When I was your age, I was playing outside. What outside? You mean the Walmart parking lot? Because that's all that you've left for us. Ironically, I think, there is an infantilization of young people. And we talk about, as adults in society, how we want to protect childhood and protect youth and protect innocence, but at the same time give them no spaces to be kids. And we expect them to grow up fast, and we put so many responsibilities on them. We make them want to be adults. So they start acting more like adults. So we're going to get into the next section, which is a very important one. We're going to talk about the methods that are often used by abusers. This is going to be a critical section for understanding and seeing the signs in others around you. So now we're going to be talking about the methods that are commonly used by abusers to manipulate their victims. The first, and one that you may be familiar with, is a suspicious and sudden burst of attention or favoritism towards the victim. Out of nowhere, giving the person lots and lots of attention, feeding a large amount of dopamine to the victim, giving them a large amount of positive attention, making them feel very special very quickly. The other term you may be familiar with is love bombing. Flattery and love bombing. Overwhelming someone with this positive attention and feelings that they are special, that they've made a special and unique connection with someone. Now Melissa Keys puts it, just see something in you even if no one else does. An excellent example. Another example here is, I feel like I've known you forever. You're not like everyone else. You have examples, let me know. Things that you think might fit concepts we're talking about. Another step or stage in this is obligation building. And what I mean by that is doing things for the person that make them feel perhaps grateful, but also obligated, making them feel like they owe the person. Small favors, little things that build up to larger and larger favors. And isolation, beginning to separate the person from others in the community. Isolation is a very big step in this process, cutting them off from potential sources of help, from sources that might recognize what's going on. And secret keeping. Secret keeping is another big stage in this process. It also helps the person feel special, and it encourages them to share secrets with the potential abuser that might be used against them in the future. You're the only one I could ever talk about this with. More ways to make the person feel special and separate and isolated. As Rao just put it, a big cult recruiting tactic too. That's a very good point. There's also, what we're seeing here, a lot of signs of cult recruitment. And cults very often prey on the same types of people and engage in the same kinds of behaviors and exploitations. So many cult leaders commit the same kinds of abuses. Payne gives an example. I haven't told anyone this. You're the only one I want to know. Yes. It's interesting that these minor celebrities, for example, that we're talking about, or e-celebrities, they have often semi-cult-like followings, and they have a certain hold over their victims, kind of parasocial connection. Yes, Zetsunalpha, that is a very good point. If it gets out, I know who told everyone. This is a tactic that is used across many different ways that people are exploited. The reason that abusers do this is because it is effective. Abusers will also look for specific weaknesses. Specific weakness like a person who has financial difficulties. Someone that they can build obligation with easily by providing them with financial help. Make the person feel like they owe them. And even if they do begin to recognize that they're being abused, they feel like they can't leave the person because they wouldn't be able to make it without them. Specific psychological weakness is also something that will be abused. If someone knows that their victim struggles with, say, autism or bipolar disorder, they'll learn all about it so that they know how to push that person's buttons, how to use their triggers to get what they want, and any specific traumas that they can use. They may even act like they're using them positively, like, family might not care about your depression, but I do. Finding out about the person's traumas or weaknesses, making that person feel like the abuser is the only one who understands. Another stage that things get very serious at is the sending and getting of info or pictures. Enticing the person to send them private information about themselves, pictures of themselves that could be used against them, make the person feel embarrassed if they were to ever get out. This is a huge red flag stage. You know that someone in your life is sending info, sending pictures to someone in your community. That is a stage to be wary about. The abuser may be the one to start doing it, to make the other person feel comfortable doing so. And that obligation building starts to become reliance building. The victim doesn't just feel obligated, they start to rely on the person. They rely on them not just for, say, financial help. They may rely on that person for their position in the community. They may have popularity or a newfound sense of importance in the community because of their connection with the abuser. And they don't want to lose that. And they don't want to lose a sense of being special. They may have started to rely on them for social support or emotional support in these traumas that they might have, these psychological challenges they have. Building a sense of us versus them. This connects very strongly with what Rao mentioned earlier of cult recruiting and cult membership. A sense of us versus them. Other people wouldn't understand. They wouldn't understand what we have. Of course they'd say that. They're jealous of us, for example. Traumas can be from parents as well, the pain, absolutely. And unfortunately, that abuse can play itself out again because the person growing up with that abuse may feel like that is normal. And so when an abuser later on in their life begins to do the same things to them, they feel like that is normal. Or they might have seen their father treat their mother like that, and so they think that that's what love is like. Begin to get into very serious stages. Things begin to escalate. Perpetrator will begin to micromanage the victim, controlling who they associate with, what they do, when they do it, where they go, how they behave. That person messaged you? You have to tell me these things. I don't trust them. Abusive relationship among a married couple, for example. A husband may micromanage who the wife's friends can be. This isolates them, separates them from support. Only people that the abuser approves of will be able to be close to the victim. That obligation building and reliance building and secret keeping and receiving of info becomes incitement. It can be getting the person to do legally or morally dubious or embarrassing things. Getting them to steal from their parents a little bit or send embarrassing photos. Yes, they may isolate you from your own sense of self. That micromanagement, exactly as Anomalisa Keys connecting it with, after lavishing praise on you and then threatening to tear it all down, isolates you, takes away your sense of control. It makes the victim perhaps think that maybe the abuser is the one who should decide what I do and how I do it if I can't control my own behavior. And then we get to another term that is very often used nowadays, which is gaslighting. It's a very important concept, but something that's very misunderstood as well, which involves usually reversing the guilt of a situation, changing the victim's perception of their role in the abuse, making them think that they were the one who brought this on themselves, they were the one who initiated this, but also more generally just making the person doubt their own mind. Any little thing that can be made to make the person think that they can't trust their own memory. You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. You asked me to do this. You asked me for help. It wasn't like that. You're misremembering. Rob puts it, those little self-doubts become much, much bigger, and it's much easier to make the victim believe they're wrong about big things if they can't even trust their own memory about small things. If they can't trust their memory about whether they told a friend already about something that happened with their potential abuser, some small thing, how can they trust their memory about something that's really important that they certainly would never have forgotten about or misremembered? Yes, the pain, actually, that's a very good point. Comparing that person to others. Creating a fear that they'll be replaced and that all of that attention, that favoritism, that sense of being special will not only be taken away, as Anomalisa Keys put it, but that they would also be replaced by someone else. Gaslighting, I want to highlight as well, because it is not just the person. Gaslighting can also be a weaponizing of social power. Gaslighting will also begin to happen from others around the victim. For example, we talked about minor celebrities and the zealous fans they have. That's a built-in defense. It's a built-in collection of people who will defend them, who will also, perhaps unwittingly, help gaslight the victim. Some of you have been touching on this already. You're very thoughtful about it. These fans, these followers, friends of the perpetrator are right there ready to cast public doubt on the victim's memory and their perception of what's happened. But not only does the victim doubt themselves, they start to fear that others won't believe them either. And why should they? If they can't remember things correctly, if they can't trust their own memory, why would anyone else trust them? You recognize some of these things that a protector of the perpetrator might say? Are these familiar in the instances you've seen where a perpetrator is outed? They could have anyone. Why would they prey on a random fan? The victim is just bitter or jealous, or they're clout chasing, or they're obsessed with so-and-so, our favorite fandom musician, our favorite voice actor, our favorite game developer. So-and-so, well, you know that they have bipolar disorder. You know that they have BPD. You can't trust them. Or, the abuser's always been nice to me. They can't be like that. They've never done anything to me. They certainly wouldn't do that to anyone else. Why are they ruining his career? Why are they destroying this person over nothing? Over attention? Over a misunderstanding? Or a nobody? Why would they even bother? This gaslighting and FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, being put out constantly by the defenders of a perpetrator, make it so much less likely that a victim would come forward in the first place. And then we get to the stage of threats and coercion, where all of those previous things can be used against the victim. Threats to expose the victim, or embarrassing or immoral things that they've been enticed to do, pictures that they've gotten, conversations they've had where they've revealed sensitive information, all their fears and struggles and doubts they've opened up to the abuser about. Threats of the social consequences that will come to the person, because they know this person is more powerful than I am. They have more social influence than I do. I'm a nobody. Fears of becoming outcast in their community, in a community that, again, as we touched on, is a place that they thought they could feel safe in. It might be one of the only places they felt wanted or important in. And now they might lose it. And of course, the very serious threats and coercion that come about. Threats of self-harm. If you leave me, or if you tell people about this, I'll hurt myself. Or I'll hurt people you care about, or I'll hurt you. This is the end stage of this process. So how do we stop this? Those are the signs. How do we prevent this from getting this far? We need to look for these signs, of course. To be vigilant and watch for these outward behaviors, these external signs, a growing dependence on the potential victim to the abuser, and the power imbalance. Someone who has social position over the victim. Whether that is financial, just social, notoriety, might be legal position, the boss and worker, but an unequal situation. Dependence, imbalance. Those external signs, needing the abuser's approval to do things. Also adopting the abuser's mannerisms, beginning to speak or act more like them. A subtle sign that someone is becoming heavily influenced by them. A decline in the person's performance in school or work, starting to cancel plans or events that they had with you or others in the community. Again, because of needing the approval of the abuser, controlling their behavior. The person will often, not always, but often become very defensive of that relationship. Begin to believe that anyone who doubts the sincerity of that relationship is just jealous or just has something against the abuser. So be judicious if you are noticing these things. Monitor and observe, of course, if these are things that you begin to see. Take note of them, these red flags, but also get more eyes on it. Once you start paying attention, you may begin to see a lot more of these potential red flags. But confide, if you can, in someone else that you trust. This can help prevent you from doubting your own instincts and your own observations. And that's another person who can help keep an eye on things and see things that you might not. It also helps you to verify those suspicions, prevents you from jumping to conclusions. But if you approach the victim, you want to express your concern with care, not judgment, not harsh criticism off the bat. You want to offer open-ended support. You want to provide resources to them and plant the seed that you are there if they need you. The person may have already developed very strong attachment to the abuser, and they may feel that your judgment of them is judgment of them as the victim. They've already perhaps started to intertwine their identity with that abuser. Don't be shy about your concern, because you've had those concerns for a reason. Things have made you uneasy for a reason. But don't make demands of the victim. That you need to do this. You must do this. Try that open-ended support. And resources like you see on the screen, nofilter.org. And simply text that to 741-741. And Love is Respect by texting Love Is to 2522. Resources for teens and young adults who are experiencing dating abuse or manipulation. Dealing with online predators, sextortion, grooming, pressure to share images. Resources that you can give the person in case they decide that they want to reach out. In detecting and approaching and providing those open-ended support statements, you can get more information. You can probe for more info, like what kinds of things do they say when no one else is around? What do they say to you in private? Do they ever ask you to keep things secret? They may not tell you what that secret is, but they might tell you that, yeah, we're sharing some secrets. You don't have to decide anything right now. I'm here when you want to talk, when you're ready to talk about this. Because they may defend the abuser. They may minimize the harm, that it's not that bad. They're doing a lot more for me. They're not asking very much of me. If you push too hard, they'll be the one to think you're overreacting. Keep those lines of communication open. Making your own threats or demands of the potential victim will not help them. They cut off those lines of communication with you. They're cut off from an important source of support. Make sure that you're still able to check in with them. Avoid any ultimatums. Not, you need to do this by this time, or you at least have to say this. Make sure that you're still someone that they trust and would come to. When you do get to the stage that they're willing and able to come to you for help, or getting to the early intervention stage and trying to get this person separate safely from their abuser, from their manipulator. Once the problem has been acknowledged, it's time to gather trusted support. Why it's so important for you to get those extra eyes, so people are already up to speed on what's happening. The more support that you have, the better off it's going to be. The more resources that the victim has. Whether or not someone should immediately cut off and sever all contact with the abuser may depend on the situation. But I also want to make this clear. The victim doesn't owe a confrontation. They don't owe any public call-out. They don't owe any public expose. They don't owe a big blowout. The only thing they owe to themselves is to get as safe as they can. But limit the interactions. If doing so gradually is the most strategic way that works best for them, that keeps them safe, that minimizes harm to them, then that's the ideal. Begin to take control of communications. Help that person to limit the methods that the abuser can reach them at. To begin closing accounts, begin maximizing their privacy, taking the chance to go through all of their accounts, maximize their privacy options, begin to cut that person out slowly if necessary, or immediately if necessary. If they want to do so slowly, or they need to do so slowly, they may engage in disinterested behavior, shorter responses, shorter interactions, delaying their reactions, their responses to the person's overtures towards them, their contact with them, skipping replies to them. When talking to them, only talking about benign topics or staying away from personal things. Beginning to replace those supports that the abuser might have been using as obligation points. You and their trusted support, beginning to replace those things. Placing the ways that the victim has hooks in them by the abuser. Slowly taking those support posts away that the abuser is using. And this is perhaps a stage that some won't be comfortable with, but collecting and saving documentation of what's happened. This is something the victim may not want to do. They don't have to. But can be very important, especially if there does become a legal case about it. If there is, this support and defense of the abuser by their following, by their friends, by their fans. And you can help in that. Using the best practices of not only collecting and saving it, but organizing it, keeping it in safe, secure locations, shared with the trusted support so it can't just be lost or misplaced. And being judicious about how you come out with it, if the victim wants to, if the victim decides they want to come forward with this, they want to expose this, they want to expose the predator. So that you and their other support network and themselves can have a coordinated messaging, so that there are less gaps that these defenders can use against the victim. Because we see this all the time now, when there are call-outs, when there are rumors being exposed. People will cast doubt on it. People will cast aspersions on the victim who may be isolated, who does not have the support, doesn't have as many people backing them up. They don't have that social power. They don't have that social cachet that people would automatically believe them. Again, the victim doesn't owe this to anyone. They only owe it to themselves to get safe. But if they want to take that step, it's important to help them as much as you can, because it will be an uphill battle, which flies in the face of the myth that anyone would make false allegations. Astronomically rare that this happens. People don't want to go through this, particularly with those of greater social status, of greater wealth, of greater power, greater position over them. It doesn't benefit them at all. So if they do come out with it, they deserve the best support, the most judicious, the most organized support that they can. However, that slow method or that call out may not be possible because things have potentially escalated too far already. There may need to be a more emergency intervention in the situation. As if the victim is in any physical danger whatsoever. They need all of the active support that they can. And they need to make sure that there is no possible way that the abuser can reach them. Activate all the support network that they can, everyone that you can trust to help you help the victim. Ensuring that none of those people that are in this trusted support network, that are in this planning or this emergency intervention, have any connection to the abuser, would in any way help the abuser or doubt the victim. Why it may be so important to have the evidence organized and shared among those trusted persons, but again, understanding the victim's wishes. Our ultimate, most important goal is the victim's safety. Secondarily, either whatever legal options the victim wants to take or whatever social action they want to take to expose that abuser. Before the cutoff, before that severing of contact with the abuser, make sure that you can limit the access that the person has. Deleting accounts, for example, without saving information might not suit you, might not be the best option. Or you're cutting someone off before saving messages, you might not have access to them again if you do that. You want to save as much as you can beforehand and secure those accounts. And we will have a further lesson later on down the road about the more technical aspects about online account safety, for example. But make that cutoff thorough. Think about any of the possible ways that the victim might be victimized or re-victimized or reached by the abuser. And yes, Rao, a person may slip, a person may backslide into old habits. They can be very hard to break. It can be very hard to completely separate on a permanent basis from someone that you felt so connected to. It can be easy to blame the victim for that. But that's an instinct that you have to avoid. And unfortunately, you do need to be vigilant for retaliation. I don't just mean by the abuser, I mean by their friends, by their supporters, by their fans, by their sock puppets. Do not engage with those. Don't give them an opening to continue getting information, to continue traumatizing the victim. Too often, victims are then taunted and harassed by people who support the abuser. And this is the time to contact services as might be needed. Need to make some important caveats here. If there has been physical contact with the abuser, it is important to bring emergency services into the picture. Now, however, there is a great disparity in the amount of protection the legal system provides to victims. The targets of abusers are often not supported in society. We talked about how very often it is LGBTQ, young people, minorities, who are the targets of abuse. Abusers choose these people because they are less supported by society, because they are less likely to be believed, because the legal systems, the social support systems, won't give them the same level of help. Official channels may not be supportive of the victim. Many victims recognize this, they know that, and so they are afraid of using those resources. Fortunately, those fears are not unfounded. So it is important to respect the victim's wishes. But safety is priority. Their physical safety is priority. Anything else might be able to be dealt with later or in some other way. But once physical harm is done, it can't be undone. You can only help someone who is there and alive and able to be helped. Many of these abusers, they have been known to cause physical harm to their victims, or to feel like if they are about to be exposed, that they have a lot to lose. It might be better for them to do something about the victim, protect themselves. So the victim's safety is your priority as the person who wants to help them. So I will bring up sources that they might be able to turn to for help. Some of these are legal resources, some are nonprofits. But they are resources like Stop It Now, which is a national confidential helpline that anyone, victim or friend, can reach out to for help, for advice, for guidance on what to do. Call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. Go to their website. RAIN is the U.S. largest anti-sex violence organization. They have a free national confidential helpline at hotline.rain.org. The National Crisis Text Line can be reached simply by texting HOME to 741-741. It provides also 24/7 confidential support. If we are talking about a child, if this is a minor, the FBI Child Exploitation Resource is an option. 1-800-843-5678. The Center for Missing and Exploited Children as well. It's a national confidential tip line at report.cybertip.org. And you can report suspected grooming there. The Trevor Project for LGBTQ individuals can be reached by texting START to 678-678. And this can be used for any issues of discrimination, abuse, mental health struggles. For men and boys who are the victim, 1in6.org/helpline has support that is specific for men and boys. And share these resources with potential victims. Some of these are resources that you, as the person who wants to help, can reach out to. Get information, to get guidance on what can I do to help? What should I do? How should I support this person that I think is being exploited? What should I tell them? But I also want us to talk about what we think society can do better, because this just keeps happening. What can society do better in the realm of public education? While you're thinking about that, I'll say that the first and foremost, more effective and inclusive sex ed. Sex education is under attack in the US. And it's for very good reason that a lot of people want to tear it down. Because these people want to be able to exploit children. So they don't want children to understand things like bodily autonomy, like agency. They may claim that they want to protect children from these things, but what they want to do is center adults as the ones who have power and control over children. We need to teach about autonomy. We need to provide resources for parents and have much more concerted awareness campaigns about online grooming specifically. Generation is growing up living online. And yes, normalize talking about this like we're doing right now. In broader society, as Ra puts it, we need to believe victims. Do this lesson everywhere. Yes. We need to make our norms respecting the equality and respecting healthy relationships. We have extraordinarily toxic attitudes about relationships in the popular conception right now. And we know what these forces are. We know the names of people who are spreading this kind of thing. We know the Andrew Tates in the world. We know the political situation. And as has been mentioned earlier as well, there is a great deal of misinformation in media and how these things are represented as overly simplistic. But we also need media that represents and showcases healthy relationships. And not glorifying toxic ones. Other areas that we can do better in the realm of professionals is greater research and data. Understanding the trends, understanding likely victims, understanding how to recognize these signs, detecting abuse earlier. Who is at risk? How can we more effectively prevent? Businesses also have an extraordinary responsibility that they are simply not meeting. Tech companies are not providing the safeguards that are necessary. They are not providing enough resources for privacy and security, and largely that is because it is simply not profitable to do so. We need to make sure that businesses have policies and practices that support victims and not protect abusers. In the realm of government, there is so much we could talk about, but primarily funding services that provide help to victims. And having non-police emergency resources because of the fact that so many in our society are not served by the legal system. And so many situations and in tragedy when police are involved. We need a greater awareness of cybercrime as well. We're focused on physical crime or in-person crime, so to speak. But cybercrime is not something that is given a lot of attention and is not funded very well. Simply isn't enough accountability. And too many of our leaders don't understand the technology. They don't understand how TikTok works. They don't understand how people can be exploited through chat programs. And in the realm of community and our individual efforts, we can do more in volunteering and providing help to shelters and hotlines, hosting awareness events, community initiatives. Because we talked about how there are fewer and fewer spaces for young people online, and there are fewer and fewer spaces for young people in the real world. If young people feel more supported in their community and there's more to do in the physical world, they are less likely to be exposed to abusers. As Manliest Nerd puts it, yes, internet literacy is a skill. It is not taught very well. I think now that we're giving this lesson, I think I will also move up the online security lesson. We usually give that in the summer. I think I might move that up because we'll talk about the more, like I said, the technical aspects of being more safe online. And yes, the public education section, very, very important, Siren. That same neighborhood, cyberbullying, Rob puts. Yes, one kid can log off, but the other 300 people will still see everything said and continue to spread rumors, and it will carry on into real life. Yes, unfortunately, a lot of these things don't just stay online. Those embarrassing pictures don't just stay online. They have real life consequences. I want to put special emphasis on a few things. That is that number one, it is never the victim's fault. It can happen to anyone. Many scams are similar. Seniors are especially vulnerable as well as young people. These are the approaches and tactics that are used by cults. And this is abuse, not love. These behaviors don't showcase someone who cares so much about someone that they would do these things. This is abuse. Lastly, I'm not doing this to create fear, to make anyone afraid or hypervigilant. We're doing this to create awareness so that we are able to recognize these signs. Because we need to take care of each other, especially in these communities. It continues to happen among content creators. It continues to happen among fandom celebrities. It continues to happen among YouTubers. It continues to happen among musicians. Never assume you are immune, as Anomalisa Keys puts it. Very often, people think they are the last that could be taken in. I remember a story just from last year of a person who was a scam specialist or someone who worked in investigations of some kind, and they got scammed by someone who did an IRS scam, claiming that they owed the IRS a lot of money and they would be in trouble if they didn't pay up, and they ended up spending a whole lot of money that got sent to a scammer. And now the tactics with that are slightly different, but very much overlap, especially with creating a sense of urgency, like you need to do this now or there will be consequences. And yes, Rao, never assume that your favorite blank could simply not be a dirtbag because they were nice to you. Well, they're good to other people. They certainly couldn't hurt this person. The tiger might say that, well, the lion has never hurt me, so I don't know what the sheep is talking about. Never assume as well that because someone was good to you, that they couldn't be hurting someone else. Very often, because those abusers have superficial charm, because they are seemingly and outwardly respectable, we assume that they're good. We're here not to create fear, but to look out for each other and to reflect on our own relationships. Are we engaging in healthy behaviors with our friends, with our romantic interests? And to reflect on our responsibilities to others. Are we in positions where we might see people who are getting abused? Are we in positions where we work with children, like myself as a teacher, as a mandatory reporter? Are you someone who works with people with disabilities? Because disabilities are also something that are highly preyed on by abusers. We spend a lot of time in communities where there are LGBTQ individuals who might be preyed on. What responsibilities do we have to the people in our lives? Let's open it up for discussion and questions you might have. Things that you wanted to touch on but we didn't get to. Questions that you were holding towards the end. If you had any questions, now's the time. Let's talk about it. Your time to talk about anything about this issue you would like to. Now, we covered a lot of ground. Covered it in 90 minutes. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I wanted to get all that information out there for you. So if there was something that you were confused about or wanted to explore more, let me know. I think some of you made some excellent points. So much more we can do, especially in the area of education and government and business. Of course, the question does come up, as Empress mentioned, what about when accusations are false? And again, I want to point out that this is astronomically rare. Yes, the non-police emergency sources siren are very important to talk about because there are community resources out there that are doing this, and they might be available as you, the viewer out there, might be able to find in your community. There might be an NGO, there might be a local charity, there might be a local emergency line, tip line, hotline, can be texted or called, that might be able to provide non-emergency mental health resources, for example. We talked about this in our mental health first aid lesson. More communities having that kind of resource would be a big step. Yes. Keys. In a lot of cases, it does cause distrust or confusion about healthy relationships, how to interact with people. Because abuse does make it seem like that is the normal way that relationships work. That is how love is expressed. I did not know, and I do not know, may never know how it affected me. How have my relationships, my perception of relationships changed because of that? So important to make sure that people are held accountable, that victims are supported. So again, don't be afraid, but be vigilant, be aware, understand the signs and the risk factors. Take an interest in other people. Your own social connections may be what helps someone. Having a strong support network, people that you trust that you can go to. If you know something, if you suspect something, but you're not sure, those are then trusted people that you can go to say, you know, I'm worried about this, but maybe I'm not the best person to care about it, or not care about it. Maybe I'm not the best person to watch out for it. Or I need help. Can you help me keep an eye out for this person? Well, If you do come up with questions, you have thoughts about this lesson, things that you want to discuss more, we can certainly do it again. Next time, we'll do a review at our next lesson. So anything that comes up between now and then, we can talk about it. If you are in the Discord, you can certainly talk about it there. If you're not, there is a link to our Discord and the links for Twitter and Blue Sky if you want to follow along there. So welcome, Siren. I'm glad I was able to do it. I hope I did some justice to the subject. I will have a VOD of this lesson. I'll have a VOD of this lesson with the breaks and such cut out up on our YouTube channel in our playlist of lessons, which is available there at that link in the chat. Our next lesson, again, will be on vaping. We'll cover vaping next week. Unless we take a break from lessons for a week, just so that I have more time to get the next lesson ready. But the next lesson will be vaping, then cannabis on 4/20, alcohol on the 26th. And then actually in the start of May, I have some collaborations that I'm planning with some other educational streamers. So that will be fantastic. I'm very much looking forward to that. Thank you so much for watching this lesson. I hope you learned something useful and that you can apply it to improve your quality of life. If you liked what you saw, make sure to follow the channel and follow us on Twitch so you can join our lessons and games live. On the screen, you'll see links to our channel and our playlist of other lessons. Thank you again for watching and for supporting independent streaming and educational content. I hope to see you next time. Class dismissed.